Hello and welcome to the seventh day of the study of the book The Baha'i Faith and Introduction by Gloria Fezi. Today we are going to study the second session of part 2, the teachings of Baha'u'llah, the manifestations of God. The messengers of God are the founders of the world's great religions. They are not to be confused with the minor prophets, saints, or reformers who have derived their inspiration from the founder of their faith. To give an example, Christ is the founder of Christianity, which is one of the world's independent religions. Within Christianity, however, there are now hundreds of different denominations, and the station of the founders of these sects, no matter how important they may be, cannot be compared with the supreme station of Christ, whose teachings they have set out to expound. The messengers of God have appeared at different times in history and among different peoples. Indeed, it would be impossible to think of a loving Creator who could withhold His guidance from any section of the human race. These divine messengers manifest in their own lives attributes of God, such as love, mercy, justice, and power, to a degree far above the capacity of ordinary human beings. Baha'u'llah calls them the manifestations of God. If we liken God to the sun, a manifestation of God is like a perfect mirror which reflects the light, heat, and the life-giving powers of the sun. The sun does not descend onto the mirror. However, therefore, we cannot say that the mirror is the sun. But if we had no other way of seeing the sun, we could look into the mirror and see its perfect reflection. Baha'u'llah says, these sanctified mirrors are one and all exponents on earth of Him who is the central orb of the universe, His essence and ultimate purpose. From Him proceed their knowledge and power. From Him is derived their sovereignty. The beauty of their countenance is but a reflection of His image, and their revelation is sign of deathless glory. Through them is transmitted a grace that is infinite, and by them is revealed the light that can never fade. Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah. The manifestations of God have a twofold station. Each one of them is at one time or another the mouthpiece of God on earth. In this respect, they are the same, and no distinction can be made between them. Their other station pertains to the limitations of the human world. Each has a different name, a distinct individuality, and a definite mission. When addressing the world, God's messengers sometimes speaks with the voice and authority of God Himself, while at other times He speaks as a man charged with a message from God to his fellow man. In the words of Baha'u'llah, were any of the all-embracing manifestations of God to declare, I am God, He verily speaketh the truth, and no doubt attached on thereto. For it had been repeatedly demonstrated that through the revelation, the attributes and names, the revelation of God, His names and His attributes, are made manifest in the world. And were they to say, we are the servants of God, this also is a manifest and indisputable fact. For they have been made manifest in the uttermost state of servitude, a servitude the like of which no man can possibly attain. Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah. Most people are prepared to accept the founder of their own faith as the mouthpiece or manifestation of God on earth, but they are convinced that His station is unique and the founders of other religions cannot be compared with Him. Baha'u'llah teaches that the messengers of God are not to be set up as rivals in the world, each competing with the others for the homage of the human race. They are like teachers in the same school. As a wise teacher adapts his teaching to the capacity of his students, These divine educators have each given teachings in accordance with the capacity of the people among whom they appeared. These lessons given to a class of small children cannot be the same as those given to older students, even if the teachers of both groups have been trained in the same college and possesses the same amount of knowledge. Likewise, the educators of humanity, though deriving their inspiration from the same source, have taught what was best for those they came to help. Many of their teachings are identical. These are the eternal spiritual laws which are repeated from age to age, and these are the foundation of God's religion wherever it has been taught. The messengers of God have all taught their fellow men to be loving and generous, humble and truthful, to see their own faults rather than the faults of others, and to return good for evil. These are some of those eternal laws which never change. So people living across the world from each other and having no knowledge of each other's beliefs follow the same spiritual standards given to them by one or another of God's messengers. Some of their other teachings, however, are not alike. These concern social laws such as laws of marriage and divorce, diet and cleanliness. As the people among them whom they came lived under different social conditions, each of the divine teachers gave the laws needed for the same time and place in which he came. But God's messengers are not just lawgivers. Though they give new commandments and abrogate old laws, they also have the power to change the heart of man. The grace of God flows through them and brings new life to a dead world. They open the eyes of people to truth when they are blinded by ignorance and prejudice, and they inspire their followers with a faith which nothing can shake and a devotion which makes saints and heroes out of the most ordinary human beings. The influence of the words of a messenger of God is felt by all, even those who do not believe in him. For the appearance of each of these messengers is like the coming of spring, which brings fresh growth and movement to the earth and affects every planet with its life-giving power, even those that remain in the shade and never see the sun. The divine springtime sets into motion two kinds of movements in the world. On the one hand, man-made dogmas, rituals, and traditions that have been blindly imitated for generations are one by one questioned and discarded. And humanity passing through a state of transition experiments with all forms of ideas, hoping to find its way out of the chaos which the downfall of the old order has produced. On the other hand, the standards brought for the new age by God's messenger gradually penetrate throughout society, and receptive souls begin to echo his words, even if they have not heard of him. His few fellow men who have recognized him as the mouthpiece of God are filled with such devotion that they transcend all human barriers and unite in true fellowship. A new stage of God's plan for the human race is unfolded before their eyes, and in their eagerness to play their part, they rise above all selfish considerations. Though ridiculed and persecuted at first, the followers of the new faith grow in numbers until they change the whole spiritual and social atmosphere around them. The unity which is thus established between people who had lived and worked in opposing camps paves the way for a new civilization in which the arts and science develop and the human race reaches greater height of spiritual achievement. In the physical world, the spring is followed by summer, autumn, and winter. In the spiritual life of mankind on this earth, too, a cycle commences, and with the coming of a divine manifestation. slowly gathers momentum as it moves forward until the mission of that particular dispensation is fulfilled and its fairest fruits given to the world. Then its power gradually diminishes and decay sets in. The cohesive force which held people together is finally spent, and the spirit which the messengers of God infused into his fellow followers grows cold and dies. His beautiful teachings, which had once united them, are interpreted in hundreds of different ways. Sects and divisions are formed, each preaching a different message. The letter of the word becomes more important than the spirit. And intolerance, even hatred, replaces love between those who had once worshipped together. Many people, disillusioned by the superstitions and irrational arguments presented in the name of religion and disheartened by the fanaticism and intolerance they see among various sects, turn away from religion altogether. Materialism, followed by selfishness and greed, creeps into every section of a diseased society, and humans sink down to the level of beasts. At such a time, even the most learned and sincere among people cannot prescribe the spiritual remedy needed for the sick body of mankind. Only another manifestation of God, reflecting his healing powers, can become the savior of the world. When every other door is closed, the messenger of God appears. He is the only way, the only refuge, the single light in the darkness that has set in. This great drama has been repeated in different parts of the earth, and these very terms have been used in the various holy books of the past. In the previous days, however, because of geographical barriers, people live in one part of the planet did not know what happened in other places, and followers of each religion thought they had a monopoly of the truth. They did not realize that God had cared for people living across the world who had no means of knowing about the great figure whom they themselves had recognized as a representative of God on earth. Now we can see what has been happening. But the great religions of the world have, in the meantime, become so distorted by people and have split into so many conflicting sects that it is impossible to go back to their pure source and disentangle the original message from the interpretation of its followers. Much of the teachings of the founders is completely lost. In the holy books, expressions are often used which have lost their original meaning and have come to mean something entirely different in existing languages. Other passages are purely symbolic and people do not agree about their interpretation. Despite the great conflict of ideas that now exist among those professing different faiths, there are certain essential similarities between the major religions of the past, which are too obvious to be overlooked. They all believe in a creator, whether they call him God, the first cause, or some other name. They all have a central figure, one lone man, whose love have changed the lives of millions of people and whose words are still a source of hope and inspiration many centuries after they were spoken. They all prophesy that there is more to come, and they all promise that in time, when people have lost faith and love has grown cold, a great one will appear to gather the children of man from the four corners of the earth and usher in the days of universal brotherhood.